Thanks for
Oh, he
clicking
wants
play on the
to.
first ever live edition of Iowa Revolution. My name is Spencer. He's Dr. Bob. Thanks to everybody that's already joining us. Dr. Bob, good to see you.
It's good to see you, Spencer. I'm used to it sitting next to each other, so this is a little different, but that's okay.
Yeah, this will be different, but yeah, we wanted to try something to get some of your readers on Deep Midwest a chance to see what we do on our podcast. So again, thanks for everybody that's clicked on over and joining us live here. We got plenty of stuff to talk about today. First of all, Dr. Bob interviewed some Nazis last week at a protest in Des Moines, so I wanted to get his thoughts on how that went. Also, the Democrats are seemingly in disarray. And from Politico, they're saying that the moderate Democrats now have the power. So I wanted to get your thoughts on that Politico article. Also, from the AP, I'm sure a lot of people that are tuning in right now know about the deportations that went through over the weekend. A judge tried to stop those, but they went through. So we'll see where we're at now. Also, I'm sure a lot of people are interested to hear about the Voice of America. The funding has been cut for Radio Free Europe, Radio Free Asia. In fact, Laura Bellin, who we are mutual friends with, used to work for Radio Free Europe. So it's something that's near and dear to both of us. Also, we have Iowa this week, and I think this is a pretty interesting story. It's about copyright law when it comes to artificial intelligence, something we've talked about before on this show. We have a factoid of the week and top 5 portmanteaus. Am I saying that right, Dr. Bob? Is it portmanteaus or portmanteaus?
I've always pronounced it the very few times I have, just like you have, but I don't know if that's right.
And there's a couple on here that I wasn't even familiar with the fact that they were portmanteaus. So, top 5 portmanteaus to end the show. So, without any further ado, Dr. Bob, you had a piece last week on your Deep Midwest, which we are coming to people live right now. If you are just tuning in, my name is Spencer. He's Dr. Bob. This is the Iowa Revolution podcast. We do this on a weekly basis. But, Dr. Bob, you spoke with some Nazis that were at the Capitol protesting last week. First of all, your thoughts on how that went?
Well, it was very interesting. I was there to watch. There was a LGBTQ plus day on the Hill, and just 2 weeks before that, our transgender family, friends, and relatives, people that we know and care about, they had some of their civil rights taken away by the Iowa legislature, and including rights to housing, rights to different kinds of full access. It was just really a terrible day. And then 2 weeks later, we had this just a rally of just people showing support for each other. And I heard that there were some Nazis out front of the Capitol protesting, and so I went and I interviewed them. And I knew that there would be other people covering what was going on inside at the Capitol with you know the the whole gathering of solidarity. And so I thought, well, I don't have to cover that. I'll go talk to the Nazis because nobody else is going to talk to them. And I'm an anthropologist. And I went out there, and this is, I don't know, I think I published it this Monday. I published the transcript. I published what they had to say, and it was horrifying. One of the things that was most horrifying about it was that these young men were committed, fundamentally misguided. They weren't dummies. They live in a media, atmosphere that's just horrific. And so you can read the transcript, but listening to their voices is the scariest part of it to me. But also a scary part to me was, first, they just want everybody that isn't white to go away. They want them to go back to Europe or Africa or wherever they were from. Just that they want the United States to be a white ethno state, saying that's what it was founded upon. And I pushed back against them a lot. It was hard. I don't like to interrupt. I like to listen and let people have their say. They were just giving me so much nonsense that I had to push back continually, or it would be overwhelming. The scariest part to me was that they said that if people wouldn't leave, if the queer community and anybody that wasn't European, if they didn't leave, we should put them on reservations.
Right.
and they said, let them practice their degeneracy there. And that was horrifying to me. I should have said, do you mean concentration camps? But I didn't think about that. But, it was horrifying. And so we need to take these people seriously. I criticized a Republican Party Chairman Jeff Kaufman, who's supposed to be a historian. I criticized him for, he made when the Patriot Front were here, he said that they were just morons and that the Republican Party would very much push back against any of the white nationalist stuff. And that's not true. They're embracing it. And these guys aren't morons. And so Jeff Kaufman was trying to act like they weren't aligned with the Republican Party, but they loved what these Nazis loved what the Republican Party of Iowa is doing, what the Republican Party nationally is doing. They love Donald Trump. They say that most people agree with them that we all want a white ethno state because we voted for Trump. And so it was very sad, but I talked with them. So, you were able to hear what they said, read what they said, and they're all in for Trump. So, but on the other end of things, I also attended a veterans protest against Trump, and that was very meaningful to me. And the veterans were. I wrote a piece about this too. Actually, I wrote two pieces about it in the sense I got more information from a man I met there, Van Garman, who's a great guy and a veteran. And anyway, so I wrote two pieces about it. But watching our veterans there, and what they were saying about Donald Trump and Elon Musk and Joni Ernst. And Joni Ernst they're really against anything that she does because she's military, but then it's just, abandoned, any constitutional principles by supporting Trump. So it was very interesting. I was very happy to see them and very proud to stand with our veterans in opposition to Trump and the Republican dismantling of democracy.
Thanks for everybody that's joined us live so far. This is the first ever live edition of Iowa Revolution, something that Dr. Bob and I do each and every week that gets emailed to you if you are a subscriber. Make sure you do subscribe, Iowa Revolution on Substack, and you can get this email to your email address each and every time we drop an episode. And before we get into some more national politics here, Dr. Bob, you are joining us right now from the state capitol in Des Moines. What are you doing up there today?
Well, I'm watching Republicans do in just one day what a lot of the Trump administration is doing nationally. First I was at a subcommittee hearing about making it harder for people that need help with food to get SNAP benefits. And, they just want the kids to be hungry, I presume, so that they want people to be hungry, so we have to work 3 jobs. Okay.
Right.
And they don't want to feed the kids. They think that we're all cheaters, that we're all moochers, and that they're sort of projecting. They know what they would do if they needed help, but or if they didn't need help. They just naturally deep down think that we're all a bunch of cheaters and losers, and therefore we have to be forced, to be hungry so that we pull ourselves up by our bootstraps. And a lot of people don't have bootstraps, and the kids certainly don't. So, and then just the Republicans are, just, going away and, causing harm, to the constituents. And then I went and watched Black Caucus, members of the Black Caucus. They had a press conference pushing back against some anti-DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion legislation that has, turn the world upside down. This is white American Christian males, mainly the most privileged people in the history of the planet, acting like they're victims. And so the world is upside down. It's a bizarro world in Republican land. And so I was there. They gave, some great thoughts to the press. We'll see. There was a lot of press there. I hope to get a lot of good coverage. So that was really good. And so all this anti-DEI, erasing our history, that Republicans are doing across the nation, Iowa Republicans are trying to do the same thing, and recognize, of course, that all of this stuff isn't coming from Iowans. This is all coming from, some national agenda. And I was talking to one of the representatives, Amos from Waterloo, and he was telling me he's looked at all the people supporting these anti-DEI bills, and he's a great guy, former worker at John Deere, and he was saying that the people lobbying for it aren't from here. They're big conservative think tanks,
Right.
out there in the rest of the world. And Mr. Amos was, spot on. They were all on. Lots of great things being said. I'll probably write it up. And if the transcript comes out, well, I'll put the transcript up. So that was it. And their suggestions were that people have to write and call their representatives and tell them this isn't okay. Do we want Iowa to be seen as a welcoming, diverse place, not like the Nazis want as a white ethno state? So, I mean, the Nazis, of course, would love this anti-DEI legislation. And one of the points was that DEI helps us all. I mean, I'm an old guy. I don't want to be discriminated against. And the Republicans tend to make it about race. It's also about people that, are in wheelchairs. It's about women. I mean, it's Title IX next. And they act like, and so they're coming after all of us or somebody in our family by pushing across this hateful legislation. And so, and then this afternoon, it's Refugee Day.
I was going to say, there's the irony in it all. All the things that you just mentioned about making Iowa a less welcoming place. And now we're celebrating all the refugees that we welcomed over the past, 50 years.
Well, and yeah, that's right. And so that it's Refugee Day, and I bet there'll be a lot of Lutherans there because the Lutherans have done a great job. Lutheran Services in Iowa and other organizations have done a great job helping our refugee populations. And some of these are people who fought side by side with our soldiers and Marines and other armed services in Afghanistan. And
Right.
and the contract was for like $1.5 million that Lutheran Services in Iowa got to help place refugees. And it was like it helped them to the tune of like $18 a day or something. And that funding was stopped. A lot of this is money already spent. Trump stopped it. And Michael Flynn called it a money laundering organization, Lutheran Services in Iowa, and Kim Reynolds was called on it, and she wouldn't defend Lutheran Services in Iowa. We're doing so much to help refugees. Bob Ray, the great Iowa governor who brought in people after the Vietnam War, is spinning in his grave. So this isn't the state I grew up in. It isn't the state that Bob Ray was governor. So it's going to be very interesting. Sarah Trone Garriott has proposed legislation if the federal government will break its promise to the refugees, to Lutheran Services of Iowa. Iowa should step up and provide that help. And so far, she hasn't got a lot of support the last time that I talked about it from the Republican side of things. I also was at a pipeline protest. I guess it was yesterday. It all sort of runs together. I go to these things. Well, I'm sort of drawn to protests because I want to know what people believe and why, and I can learn a lot from protests. And the pipeline was a hot topic. It's actually a bipartisan topic, eminent domain legislation for the pipelines, and lots of good people here protesting. And I knew that there were Democrats that were anti-eminent domain, and there were Republicans that were anti-eminent domain. And I knew that the bill could pass if it got a floor debate, but legislative leaders won't put it to the floor unless there are 26 Republican votes. So overall, if they just put it on the floor, the anti-eminent domain legislation would pass. But they're saying no. we need all votes to be Republican. That's anti-democracy.
Right.
Yeah. So I mean, it's been very interesting. Uh, up at the Capitol, there's an event at Progress Iowa uh, uh, town hall for Zach Nunn, who won't come at the Central Library tomorrow at 3. I'm going to try to make it. So it's the Republican town halls are, they're suggesting that they don't hold them. Grassley has one. Oh, people should look it up. Iowa Starting Line has all of these town halls. Grassley and Henson have one. Go to the Iowa Starting Line, a great source to find out where those town halls are. There's one in Iowa Falls. There's one in Hampton. I'll tell you tomorrow or the next day. Iowa Starting Line, that's a great place. But I saw they had them all posted, and so we need to go and share what we think peacefully, and it's very interesting. And I'll point out that Joni Ernst was at the Capitol today. And I
Yeah,
don't
you
know
told me
if she
that.
was here, but there were several, men, sort of Republicans, I presume, fawning over her, acting like she was, something special when she's betrayed Iowans and Americans. And if you saw um, the video that Laura Bellin put up of Marionette Miller Meeks trying to get next to Trump at an event, if you saw her, the
Yep.
look she had like a schoolgirl crush on Donald Trump. These guys had the same look for Joni Ernst, so that was interesting. So
Well, let's get into
lots
some
happening.
bringing up the national politicians from Iowa. Let's get into some national political news with Chalk Talk. By the way, thanks to everybody that's joined us. We're up to 300 viewers right now joining us live. Dr. Bob's at the state capitol. My name is Spencer Dirks. This is the Iowa Revolution podcast, and we're doing this live for the first time ever. So again, thanks to everybody that's joining us live. This is from Politico, Dr. Bob. Moderate Democrats are on a tear. Democrats are overperforming at the state level, with centrist candidates flipping one seat and coming close in another in special elections in deep red parts of Iowa. Rahm Emanuel, who once orchestrated a takeover of the House by recruiting Blue Dog Democrats, is eyeing a 2028 bid for president. And leading Democrats like Gavin Newsom and Chuck Schumer are rebuffing the left, the California governor siding against trans players in women's sports, and the Senate minority leader veering away from progressive demands to shut down the government. This is from Jonathan Cott, the one-time senior advisor to the former centrist Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia. He said, quote, "Moderates are having their moment. I think people are realizing that there were many reasons we lost in 2024, but an acquiescence to all of the liberal groups and fighting and dying on hills about 1 and 2 and 3% of the voting population seemed really dumb." A fresh batch of public polling over the weekend showed the Democratic Party is facing its worst image crisis in some time. An NBC News poll showed more than half of independents have an unfavorable view of the party. Just 11% of independents have positive views of Democrats, which could explain why Democrats are pivoting to reach these voters. Even their own polling sees a move toward the center. In the party's latest internal survey in congressional battlegrounds, the vast majority of voters, 69%, said Democrats were, quote, too focused on being politically correct, while 51% said the party is, quote, elitist, according to a poll conducted by the Democratic group Navigator Research.
Yeah, well, very interesting. I just say that moderates, more people to the left and people center right, all can be a part of the Democratic Party. There's a lot that we have in common. And that one of the things that we have to make sure that we don't do is abandon our values. And I'm not going to abandon basic democratic values, and that's opportunities for everybody. That's feeding the hungry, healing the sick. I mean, helping our neighbors. I just think that, like Gavin Newsom. Well, first, this whole thing about um, trans people, this isn't a narrative that the Democrats have pushed. This is a
Correct.
narrative that the Republicans have pushed. This isn't the Democrats. The Democrats need to defend every American. That's the bottom line. And the number of trans people that we're talking about are infinitesimally small. They're small numbers. The trans community, a friend of mine Diana Gates, has a solution. It's just basically that it is her suggestion is that if you've been through male puberty or going through male puberty, it will give you an advantage, because of sexual dimorphism, different sizes, speeds, et cetera. And that of course it's not fair for somebody that has that advantage of having gone through male puberty. And so that's a talking point. That's a solution proposed by the trans community. And I think that that's very interesting. And I think Gavin Newsom, as he abandons his principles, he's still, I don't know. This is me being an Iowan and just, being, I don't know. I don't even know how this, there's just a primal thing in this reptilian brain that Gavin Newsom is just too slick to believe.
Yeah,
And so
to me, he seems like a sleazeball.
Yeah.
And here's two things. First of all, Rahm Emanuel, it's hard to read the tea leaves 3 years ahead of time, but I don't think Rahm Emanuel has a snowball's chance in hell of getting the Democratic nomination in 2028. But if you look at the last two Democratic presidents we've had, Bill Clinton and Barack Obama, both were centrists. That is a winning formula, at least in the past. Things have changed, I think, probably since Obama was reelected in 2012 even. But it does seem like that's when we've had the most national political success, is having a centrist candidate.
Well, everything has moved so far to the right. The center, what used to be the center, is the left now. Right. And I think that we have got plenty of leaders there on the left. And I've read this somewhere that, everybody's, the Democrats are like, struggling for leaders to emerge. Who I see as leaders already emerged is AOC, Jasmine Crockett, Bernie Sanders. They're out there, and Tim Walz. I went to the Tim Walz event. He was dynamite. I wrote about that too. I think the people that are stepping up and fighting now are leaders. And then I think that we get behind them and we'll see who emerges. But I don't think that we think about things in terms of center, left, or right. We think about values. What do we believe in as people? And so if we're not feeding starving kids around the world, if we're letting millions of kids die because we're withholding their HIV medication, it's just wrong. And people, and look at what they did to those Venezuelans. I don't know how many of them they shipped off in planes without no due process. We live in a country where the administration is grabbing people off of the streets saying that they're members of a gang with no due process, deporting them to El Salvador, to the worst prison perhaps in the world. And we don't know who they are. We don't know what they did. And that our government did that. Did you see that the people, and this is a connection I'm not comfortable making, but if you saw those images of those Venezuelan men with their shaved heads, and you saw the men, whoever they weren't labeled, they weren't normal military gear. They had masks on just like the Nazis on the State House grounds. They don't want to be identified. And that's where we are. And who's next? Who's next that just gets whisked away? And Trump's pushing it and pushing it and pushing it, going a little bit farther, and the American people aren't paying attention. And it's horrific.
By the way, old school radio guy, perfect segue. You know what you're doing, Dr. Bob. Thanks for everybody that's tuned in so far on the Iowa Revolution podcast. The first time we've ever done this live, going great so far. 323 of you are joining us live for this podcast. And we do this every week. We usually record on Tuesdays, release it on Wednesday morning. So make sure you subscribe to our Substack, Iowa Revolution, and you will get that podcast emailed to you each and every time we drop an episode. So, Dr. Bob, you were mentioning the Venezuelans that were being deported. So this is from the AP. The Trump administration has transferred hundreds of immigrants to El Salvador, even as a federal judge issued an order temporarily barring the deportations under an 18th century wartime declaration targeting Venezuelan gang members, officials said on Sunday. Flights were in the air at the time of the ruling. U.S. District Judge James E. Boasberg issued an order Saturday temporarily blocking the deportations, but lawyers told him they were already two planes with immigrants in the air, one headed for El Salvador, the other for Honduras. Boasberg verbally ordered the planes to be turned around, but they apparently were not, and he did not include the directive in his written order. Trump sidestepped a question over whether his administration violated a court order while speaking to reporters aboard Air Force One on Sunday evening. Trump said, quote, "I don't know. You have to speak to the lawyers about that. I can tell you this, these were bad people." But we don't even know who they are.
We don't know anything. And
And never
I
will, and never will.
yeah, let me, as an aside here, let me say that I see some comments going by. I can't read them all, but I really appreciate the comments. And when we watch this again, we will look at the comments and you can
I'm pretty
comment.
sure I saw our friend Nathan Sage said two faces for radio. So I appreciate
Yeah,
that
that's
comment,
right.
Nathan.
Well,
It's
if
certainly
you
one of the
see
most
them, if
honest
you catch
comments that you
them,
can find.
if you catch them, would you reply to them? I really appreciate your comments. I'd like this to be as interactive as possible.
Yep.
But yeah, well, some families of some of the men, four of the men, I think, were interviewed, and the family said they weren't gang members. They were here, they were working, they were contributing to society, and that's
Yeah, and
just what
some
we
of
have.
these were because they had gang affiliated tattoos where you might get, you might jump into a gang when you're 14 years old, get a tattoo. And if you're 25 years old, you may not have any association with that life anymore. So
Well, and
just
the
because
fact,
of a tattoo, now you're in a foreign country and you've been disappeared off the face of the earth.
well, and for a great many of these men, that they were forced into the gang. The alternative was death for you or your family. They were coerced. And so it's
Right,
just not like, oh, I'm a Yankees fan or whatever.
right.
They didn't opt in. It was their only choice. And again, one of the things that I like to say all of the time is much of the unrest around the world, these aren't poor countries. These were countries that European capitalists have mined for generations
Yep.
without any concern. They've extracted the resources without any concerns for the environment or the humanitarian costs. And so uh, a lot of the unrest around the world and people that are looking for a better life are looking for a better life because some of the things that we've done in the past have been wrong and that we need to recognize it. But the Republicans want to erase history. They don't want any responsibility for any of that. And so that's why they're, reworking, our history books and saying you can't have, you can't have, I don't know, anything that is upsetting, in
They've
the
removed
curriculum.
Jackie Robinson
Yeah,
from the Defense Department's website because that was focusing on DEI.
I worked in northeastern Arizona in the 1980s on Navajo lands, and one of the guys I worked with was a code talker in World War II. He was a great man, a great friend, an American World War II hero. And I read that they're erasing these code talkers. There was a code talker, a Navajo I believe, that helped raise that iconic image, that photograph of the flag raising at Iwo Jima. And they've erased that guy. They're not having him there, and it's crazy. It's wrong. It's fundamentally wrong. And the ultimate goal, and I'm just going to say it, is this: the ultimate goal has to be a corporate white nationalist, in air quotes, Christian, because there's nothing Christian about the right to me as I was raised, ethno state. And
By the way,
that might seem harsh,
Dr.
but
Bob, we've heard from the 7 times. They say Dr. Bob is on fire. You are absolutely on fire, Dr. Bob. And also, this is from Jay Gilchrist, I believe. How can we take on the mega think tankers in ways that will break through to more of the public? That's a good question from Jay Gilchrist.
well, I guess I don't have any answers. except that I
Well, here
know
we
that we have
go. I mean, here's something
fight.
that we've talked about plenty of times before. A lot of those think tankers are not even Democrats. I mean, a lot of the people that are giving these marching orders work for both parties. They're not
Well, yeah,
Democratic
that
consultants, even.
yeah, the national consultants. We have to get rid of the national consultants where they're burning our money. Invest in various progressive groups. Invest in local candidates. Um, in January, the National Democratic Party spent $10 million for ads against Republicans, including Nunn and Miller Meeks, I believe, 8 different
Yeah.
Republicans. They spent $10 million in January
After the
against
election.
Republicans. Right. That's called
Yeah.
burning money. And you know why? Because they got paid for that.
Right.
So get rid of the consultants, but also everything that we all have different talents. Not all of us have money. People with money donate to local Democratic candidates, donate to the local party, donate to groups that you believe in their mission, like Progress Iowa, Iowa CCI, Faith Climate Coalition, renamed from Iowa Interfaith Power and Light, just different groups. Let those people invest in helping to organize, write letters, just everything that you can do, anything that, and I think it's really important. In the late 70s, I was in Seattle in graduate school and I was doing some volunteer work for the Sierra Club. And they made me feel like I was never doing enough. And I was in
Right.
graduate school. And so the thing is, we don't have to go all in and do everything. We just have to do something. Write letters, talk to your friends, engage. And the pain is going to be so hard on everybody as the Trump administration does what it does. Wait till we start having trouble with Social Security payments and Medicare and Medicaid and just society. They're stripping it for parts. They want us all hungry and they want us to be serfs on the land. And they're just extracting our resources and they're pulling our tax dollars into private hands. And one of the things that I want, so yes, do something, do anything. It's just so important for us to do it. And it has to be something we find joy in. Don't be overwhelmed. If you like making phone calls, make phone calls. If you like writing letters to the editor of your local paper, do that. I mean, I have a number of friends that do that in their small towns. And in our small towns, you can make a big difference in rural counties. And, in 2 of the counties that in Iowa that moved the 2 rural counties that moved the least toward Trump are parties where there are good local Democrats, farmers, farm families that are leaders in the community. And so they are making a difference in their counties. And so, so can we. And as everything starts to break down and when the when grandmas start losing their Social Security money, they're going to be looking for a place. And I think that we give them grace and we welcome them. I don't know if that
I
answered
agree.
your question,
I think
but
it did. Yeah. Everybody's got to pitch in, is basically what we got to do. And like you said, however you can do that, just whatever you can do, a little bit goes a long way, especially when it comes to this next election cycle. Let's get into some of a wider scope, still kind of politics, but a little bit of a wider scope here. And this is from Dave Busick on his On Media Substack. So make sure you follow Dave Busick as well. He always has some really good articles about the media. He writes, if the Voice of America had been shut down at any other point in American history, it would be a lead story for weeks on end. But Trump pulling the plug on America's loudspeaker is just another in a long list of previously unthinkable disasters that have befallen our country since January 20th. It hasn't gotten the attention it deserves. VOA, or Voice of America, was founded in 1942 as a way to counter Nazi propaganda around the world. For the last 80 years, it has broadcast straight, unbiased news about world events into authoritarian countries where citizens are denied access to real journalism. Late last Friday night, Trump gutted 7 more federal agencies, including the umbrella organization running Voice of America, Radio Free Europe, Radio Free Asia, Radio Marty, and other outlets. Staff were told not to come to work. The stations have either gone dark or have replaced news broadcasts with music because there's no one left to tell America's story around the world. To find out what it all means, I called Jim Fry, one of my classmates and best friends from the University of Missouri School of Journalism. He retired from VOA in 2023. When he heard the news late last Friday, Fry says, quote, "I was sick to my stomach." Trump has long complained about what he sees as VOA's liberal bias, but like most of his complaints about the news media, his accusations aren't true. Fry says coverage on VOA was, quote, "right down the middle. We took that sort of thing seriously until the day it was closed 2 days ago. We took seriously the idea that we cover the news without regard to what a politician or policymaker would think or say," end quote. In fact, VOA's congressional charter is supposed to protect it from whatever political winds blow in with the new administration. In true Trumpian style, though, he didn't just huff and puff, he blew the whole thing down. By the way, I would recommend going to that On Media Dave Busick's page on Substack and checking out that whole interview. By the way, if you are just tuned in, this is the Iowa Revolution podcast. My name is Spencer. He's Dr. Bob. 366 people are joining us. And Julie says, do not be afraid to speak out. It can be hard, but you can feel the power you have within you. And thing I would add to that, Julie, is I think when you speak out, whether it's on social media or going to protests, it also gives other people permission to be more vocal themselves. I think there's a lot more of us than there are these crazy Nazi, MAGA, right-wing, crazy people. And the more we talk about it, the more we show our true selves, the more other people will show their true selves.
Yep. I want to go back to the Voice of America thing, but first,
Please.
on this issue, know that you're not alone. That is so important. And I think I wrote this in one or both of the veterans pieces. It's just like everything I do from now on, this is sort of taking from something Maya Angelou wrote once, is somebody asked her once if she was ever afraid to stand up on a stage or speak or whatever. She says, no, because I take everyone I've ever known and loved with me on that stage. So know that we are with you. Know that the veterans that I was with at the protests at the Capitol, they're with you. And so you're not alone. And just there's millions of us that want to save democracy. We will stand there by you. And saying that, I want to say, please make sure that you're safe. You have to be safe. You have to find comfort in other people. I'm just going to say it. I'm going to talk to Nazis. I'm not worried about being safe. It's whatever happens, happens, but I have to be in those spaces. The other thing about the Voice of America, Donald Trump shut it down. Donald Trump doesn't care about Voice of America. Who cares about Voice of America is Putin.
Putin, right. Jinx.
This was done for Putin. Putin doesn't want the Russian people or the Ukrainian people or whoever to hear an unbiased news source. Trump did this for Putin. Putin has a big grin on his face right now because he's playing Donald Trump like a puppet. Donald Trump is Putin's puppet. There's no reason for Trump to shut down VOA. There is for Putin.
And I brought up, right when we started here on this live Substack, again, this is Iowa Revolution, our podcast that Dr. Bob and I do on a weekly basis. But I mentioned that Laura Bellin worked for Radio Free Europe, and a lot of her reporting was on, the former USSR, the former Soviet Union, and the authoritarianism that was rising at the time that she was doing her reporting. So here we've come full circle, and they've completely, Trump and Putin have combined to take them completely off the air, or now they're playing, ABBA for 24/7.
Yeah, and if you don't follow Laura Bellin already, please do. Have Bleeding Heartland. She's the best political analyst I know, bar none. She's fantastic. She can't be compromised. She's brave. She's courageous. She's a warrior and really, really smart.
Absolutely. This is our Iowa segment talking about artificial intelligence. And I think this is good news, Dr. Bob. This is from Reuters. A federal appeals court in Washington, D.C. on Tuesday affirmed that a work of art generated by artificial intelligence without human input cannot be copyrighted under U.S. law. The U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia agreed with the U.S. Copyright Office that an image created by Stephen Thaler's AI system, Davis, was not entitled copyright protection and that only works with human authors can be copyrighted. Tuesday's decision marks the latest attempt by U.S. officials to grapple with the copyright implications of the fast growing generative AI industry. The Copyright Office has separately rejected artist bids for copyrights on images generated by the AI system Midjourney. The artist argued that they were entitled to copyrights for images they created with AI assistance, unlike Thaler, who said that his sentient system created the image, in his case, independently. Thaler's attorney, Ryan Abbott, said he and his client, quote, strongly disagree with the ruling and intend to appeal. The Copyright Office said in a statement that it believes the court reached the correct result. Yeah, how could you possibly copyright an AI image?
Yeah, that's a good decision. And for them to say that it's sentient, so therefore, it's original. Where did the information come from? I'm not willing to admit it's sentient. I can say that it's smart, but there had to be a database of other images created by humans that it was stealing from. It just can't you can't create art without a cultural context. I don't care whether you're human or a machine.
Agree. So
Yeah,
yeah,
so
good
that's
news,
more
right?
good news.
All right.
Yeah, but
Are
it's
you
more
ready for
good.
the fact? Are you ready for the factoid of the week, Dr. Bob?
Yeah.
I've got two factoids actually. One I've got listed, the other one I just heard, so I want to pass that one along. By the way, this is the Iowa Revolution podcast. Dr. Bob is on the top. I'm on the bottom. My name is Spencer. 387 people are joining us here on this Substack Live. So thanks to everybody that has joined so far. So, factoid of the week, dreamt. Dreamt is the only English word that ends in the letters MT.
Okay. That's a factoid.
And the other
What?
one is, so you've heard the saying swab the deck, right?
Yes.
Like the sailors have to swab the deck. Did you know that that's not cleaning the deck necessarily? It's to soak the wood so it expands and it gets airtight so the seawater can't get down below. So you're really just making sure that the wood on the top deck is, yeah, swollen up and airtight so things can't get through.
I like that one.
How
I
about the
like that.
dreamt? You don't really like you don't like the dreamt
I don't,
one?
well, see, to me, I like, I'm a storyteller. I like stories. And when I see things, some things, and we all do this, some things that we see are sort of sticky. We want to tell other people that.
Right.
And so I don't really want to tell people about about dreamt, but I will tell them about swabbing the deck. I mean, that's sort of the
See, I
cutoff
think
point.
I think I might have subconsciously realized that, knowing that hey, maybe that's not the most interesting thing. But yeah, that swab the deck thing, I saw that on Twitter like yeah, like a day ago, and it's still like right there at the top of my head. So
Sticky. Yeah, sticky with me too. Thanks for that one. I'll give you a C minus for dreamt, though.
so before we get to top five, we are nearing the end here. It's hard to believe we already have been doing this for about 43 minutes. Again, if you are just joining us here on this live Substack, my name is Spencer. He's Dr. Bob. This is the Iowa Revolution podcast. We do this on a weekly basis. Anything else you want to talk about, Dr. Bob, before we get to the top five?
Just that people need to have hope, take comfort in those you love. Don't spend as much time, reading the news. I mean, read the news, but a lot of the time that we spend doing that, keeping up, up to date, a lot of it's redundant, and we could use that time for some other purpose that's more active and engaging and making a difference. And for everything that we do to make a difference, we'll feel better. And so I feel like we're part of it, that we're powerful. Everybody here has a powerful voice, and you and only you know how to use it, what you're best at, what you can find joy in the resistance. So do that. It's just we all can do something, and then we're part of it. And then we can say when our children and grandchildren and great grandchildren ask us, what did you do when the Republicans and Trump came for democracy you can say, I fought like hell, and here's exactly what I did. And believe in yourself, and let's do it.
Oh, yes. By the way, we've got a factoid from Jim Tripp. The last president to have a budget surplus was Bill Clinton. That's a good factoid. By the way, this is from Blue Thoughts from a Red State. Voice of America chief and staff are refusing to abandon their jobs and will continue working. So good for them. And thanks for the tip.
Yes, most excellent.
Top 5 portmanteaus today. Number 5, electrocute. Did you know that electrocute was a portmanteau?
Maybe you should explain what a portmanteau is.
So yeah, okay, I probably should. So a portmanteau is two or more words that are shoved together to create a new meaning or a new word. So electrocute is electric and execute. So to electrocute somebody is to execute them through electricity. There you go. Number 4, gerrymander. I did not know gerrymander was a portmanteau. Do you
Yeah,
know
well,
where that?
explain it.
I'm sure you probably sort of know where this comes from, but do you know where Jerry and Mander come from?
I know that Jerry, which is how most of us pronounce it, is correctly pronounced Gary. It's named
Uh,
after,
So
yeah,
yeah,
so
here's
I'm,
so it's named after a United States, the fifth vice president of the U.S. He was a Democratic Republican named Elbridge, and yeah, I think it is Gary, but yeah, Gerry. He was a governor of Massachusetts before becoming vice president, and during his term, the legislature reorganized the legislative districts, including one in Essex County that resembled a salamander. So the Boston Gazette published a cartoon calling it a gerrymander. So there you go.
I like that.
I knew you would. I knew you'd like that one. Number 3 is splatter.
I did not know that.
I didn't either. So splatter is a combination of splash and spatter.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a pretty good one.
Yeah.
Number 2, I think most people will be familiar with, though. Number 2 is, especially during the Thanksgiving season, turducken. Can you name the 3 animals that make up the turducken?
Well, turkey, duck, and chicken.
Chicken. There you go. And number 1 is stash, as in like I'm, stashing the jewels or stashing the treasure, which I also did not know was a portmanteau.
I didn't know any of these were.
Stash is a combination of store and cache, like CACHE, like a cache of documents or whatever you're trying to hide. So store and cache combine to make stash.
Well, and everybody that's new to this, that hasn't listened to Iowa Revolution before, this is Spencer's attempt in these trying times to provide, a little bit of a humorous outro for us. And
See,
he does
we need to
a
have a
great job.
dismount. We don't want to go out talking about, hey, Voice of America's gone. We'll see you next time. All right. Yeah, we got to
Yeah.
have some sort of fun. And usually that comes towards the end.
Yep. And everybody should know that Spencer does all the work with this. I just show up. He
Yes,
has all the plans.
that is the truth. But like I've said before, that's enough. That's all I need from you, Dr. Bob. Just show up, and that's all I need. And especially today, like we heard from a listener earlier say that you were on fire today. It did seem like you were chomping at the bit. You were ready to go for this live. By the way, up to 400 live watchers right now.
Yeah. And the 7 times, everybody should check out the 7 times. It's my friend Nick Heftman. He does great, great work. Does produce great video producer, documentary maker, filmmaker. With the new documentary out about Caleb Rainey, the Negro artist. So check out the 7 times, and he does beautiful, beautiful work when you see him and his featuring of Black entrepreneurs. And so Nick's a treasure.
Definitely an important follow. Yeah. Thanks for the heads up, Dr. Bob. And as I said, thanks for everybody that joined us here on this Iowa Revolution Live podcast on Substack Live. Dr. Bob has Deep Midwest Politics and Culture, which I'm sure is where most of you are coming from right now. He also has Cedar Creek Nature Notes on Substack, so make sure you follow that. That's also a lighter side of things, just taking a walk and checking out nature with Dr. Bob. Then, of course, we have our Iowa Revolution podcast, which is where we get together each and every week, usually on Tuesday afternoons. It drops on Wednesday mornings, and that can get emailed to you if you subscribe, and you can subscribe for free. We also do accept paid subscribers if you'd like to support us financially as well. That's obviously always appreciated. But again, any follow, any likes, any messages, we're always down for as much interaction as we can find. And yeah, thank you to Kathy Zimpelman as well for joining the conversation. We appreciate everybody that joined us today.
Yes, thanks everybody. We will post this too. And
Yep.
please share. And thank you for all that you do. Thank you for all of your efforts. Thank you for your support of our Substacks and others. The Iowa Writers Collaborative, we're part of that. Julie Gamick is incredible. She pulled us all together and made us all one big happy family. And you out there talking with us, interacting with us, supporting us, you're part of that family too. So I thank you so much.
Yeah, definitely. I think makes all of us feel a little bit better, and that's always important in this trying time, as we like to say. Dr. Bob, obviously, I always appreciate it. This obviously went really well, so I'm sure we'll do this again sometime soon. So we'll see you next time.
Okay, thanks, Spencer. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. See you guys.